Hey, what's up everybody, this is Sound Control, and today I'm going to do something different. I'm going to actually do a studio tour. Well, not really studio tour, more like desk tour, just to show you my workflow and how each component factors into my overall workflow. So with that being said, we're going to keep this simple, and I'm going to switch the view to my desk. So just starting with the Octatrack, this is basically the center of my setup, right? So actually I started out on this channel a while back, primarily making beats on the Octatrack, and I mean obviously you only have 8 tracks Octatrack, so you have 8 tracks and sometimes 7 if you utilize the 8th track as a master channel. But today I'm not using it to make beats, I'm more so utilizing it as an effector or performance mixer to kind of create razzle dazzle quote unquote to my tracks and stuff like that. So yeah, I still send clock to other machines, but I'm not as often actually utilizing it to trigger samples, although it's a phenomenal sampler for what it does. It does have its limitations, but I think that's what makes the machine. I'll actually move on to the Digitakt 2 and the Syntakt 2, and I kind of use these interchangeably. It just depends on the context. So for the Digitakt 2, oftentimes I'm using the Digitakt 2 to take drum loops and actually chop them and mangle them, or just put it in the grid mode and really just get some interesting pockets out of this machine. I'm also utilizing it to play back samples, as well as if I'm trying to make more traditional music with chords and bass and lots of synth elements, I'll just use this to record in those elements from either Keyscape or my Hydrosynth or my keyboard. So overall, it's a great sampler. The 128 steps is great for that too. So I'm able to actually do more full-on sequences, and therefore more progressions, longer progressions that sort of evolve more. I really like the bitrate reduction on this too. It's super fire, and like my favorite feature about this is the comb filter, which I feel like is it just takes your sound and like introduces like a parallel universe for that sound. That's the best way I can describe it. Either way, I'm not going to go through every feature on this. I just think it's a dope drum machine and sample playback machine. I use it for both melody and sample playback and drums. But same with Syntakt, without the samples. I do still use the Syntakt for drums, percussion, as well as melodics, right? So, and I really think this machine has a lot of potential to introduce some interesting sounds that you normally cannot get out of standard samples. But it's a really dope machine for sound design, and I'm looking to delve deeper into more of the electronic side with this. But again, I'm kind of using these two interchangeably. Both can be utilized as a drum machine and or melodics. Of course, the Syntakt, both are monophonic, right? But the Syntakt, it has a chord machine, but I primarily utilize single machines that sort of utilize a more singular voice versus the chord machine. I've started to figure out how to use the chord machine, but still figuring that out. But I think it's overall a dope machine, and especially if you want to delve into the realm of FM synthesis and digital analog synthesis as well. This is a dope sounding box, so I kind of do that if I want to get into more. If I want to make more electronic leaning soundscapes, this is definitely it. But if I want to make more funk and hip hop type beats, Digitakt 2 is where it's at. Them together, it kind of creates something I think that's pretty new and pretty dope, right? Still figuring things out with this, but yeah, these are like the primary key components of my creation process at this point. Again, I was previously using the Octatrack as my main box to make beats, out of limitation, but now with this, I can actually let the Octatrack shine as more of an effector. This is actually sitting at the end of the chain. believe it or not, I'm not using this SP404 Mark II for its standard. I'm not using it to make beats. I'm not using it to put a whole lot of effects, although it's great for that. And sometimes I utilize the effects on there. What I primarily utilize this for might be, you might laugh or you might think this is dumb, but I utilize this machine as a beat repository. So not just that, when I'm recording my videos, the beat is going into here. So I have a bunch of beats just loaded in here. So at a moment's notice, when I'm ready to drop a project, and I actually like the beats that are in here, I have like banks and banks of beats I could just come to and sort of organize these beats into a project. And obviously add effects, resample, all of that. So I'm kind of utilizing this more as a repository and storage of my material. Nothing more, nothing less. I mean, obviously it has great capabilities. You can make a whole beat on this. It has a looper now, which I look forward to exploring a little bit more once I have a more expanded setup that allows for me to sort of have my computer out a little bit more often, so I could just record and play piano or play something from Keyscape or Omnisphere and create a loop based off of that, or even utilize these machines to make loops. But right now, it's serving as a repository for the beats that I create on these machines. Moving on to these two. The Hydrasynth, I'm using the Hydrasynth primarily for polyphonic sounds. It's an awesome synthesizer. I usually am sampling the Hydrasynth into the Digitakt 2. That's what I was kind of referencing, right? So if I want to make something more traditional with longer chord progressions, I'll sound design it here on the Hydrasynth and then I'll record it into the Digitakt 2. But yeah, the Hydrasynth is a great polyphonic synth for the price that it's at. I'd love to obviously go up and explore other polyphonic synths, but for now, this is awesome for the purpose that it serves. And also, it really got me into synthesis a little bit more. I started to understand the language and terminology, and making generative patches on here is fun, especially with all the mod matrices and the mod matrices as well as the macros. So yeah, this is a great box and love it for what it does, and extremely deep, just missing a sequencer, but it doesn't really need one if you have other things that control it. And then the Slim Fatty, although I'm not really utilizing a lot these days, I probably will utilize it more in the future. I'll probably utilize the Slim Fatty a little bit more in future iterations of my setup. Just right now, with my limited space as well as just configuration, I'm just limited in terms of the amount of chords that I can have out and available. Just plugging into my Octatrack and Digitakt 2. So there's just some limitations in terms of porting, but this is a great box. I don't know if I'm getting rid of this at all because it just produces such an interesting tone. So when I do use it, it always delivers. So yeah, that's basically my setup. I don't really use the DBX as much as more as I used to. I was previously running everything into the DBX, but I don't know. I've recently kind of stepped back from utilizing the DBX at the end of the chain or before going into the SP404. These days, I'm pretty much relying on like digital VSTs like Saturn, and I got one other thing at the end of my chain. I'm not gonna really call that out, but I really like putting it at the end of my chain in the VST world. But the DBX, it's great. It does what it needs to do, and definitely brings out some more volume. So hopefully this provided clarity on my setup.